Fall is hands down my favorite time of year to photograph, and if you're like most landscape photographers, you're probably reaching for your circular polarizer to really make those fall colors pop. But what if I told you that the way many people use a circular polarizer is actually hurting their fall photos? See, I used to make this same mistake for years until I realized what was really going on, and once you see it, there's no way you can unsee it again. See, for landscape photographers, the circular polarizer feels almost essential, especially during autumn. It reduces glare, it deepens blue skies, it cuts reflections, and it boosts contrast. And it's perhaps the only filter whose effects can't be replicated in post. This is perhaps one of my all-time favorite fall photographs from quite a few years ago, but I was using a circular polarizer. I very rarely ever shoot any kind of fall photographs that don't have a circular polarizer on the end of my camera. And this is definitely one of my all-time favorite images. Here's another image from Colorado last year during my fall workshop, once again with a circular polarizer on. And here is another one from Colorado from a few years ago, but also having a polarizer on the end of my lens in this photograph as well. But when you use it correctly, it is one of the most powerful decisions that you can make when you're on location. But here's the thing most photographers miss. Most people spin their polarizer until it hits 100% polarization. That's where the reflections are completely gone. The glare is completely gone, and the image looks crisp. But sometimes that's exactly where things go wrong. This is a really cool comparison image here. So this photograph, this is a waterfall in the Blue Ridge Mountains in North Carolina, captured quite a few years ago. And this image is not quite fall, but we're on the cusp of fall, the precipice of fall, maybe just a few weeks away from fall color. But this image here has absolutely no polarization applied to this image at all, as you might be able to see. Now this image here has a polarization applied. So no polarizer with the polarizer, no polarizer with the polarizer. And you might be saying to yourself, you know, the image with the polarizer looks completely better than the image that doesn't have the polarizer on it. And yes, I agree with you, but with a couple small tweaks, it could look even better. See, when you put too much when you turn your polarizer to 100%, you remove all of the natural sheen from leaves. Look at this. If you pay attention to this area up through here, this upper left-hand corner, you can see a lot of this natural sheen on the leaves that's coming from the light above. But when you put 100% polarization applied, look at it. It's completely gone through here. As I toggle this back and forth, pay attention to that upper left-hand corner there. You can see that, and that natural sheen really does add a little bit of dimension, a little bit of that three-dimensional feel to a photograph. So when you completely 100% remove it, you can kind of flatten things out a little bit. Another downside of applying too much polarization is it makes your shadows too deep. It makes your shadows too dark or too unnatural. If you pay attention to the shadow areas of this image specifically, all right through here, you can really see how dark all of these shadows are getting right through here. So you definitely have to pay attention to that, especially in woodland scenes where there are natural shadows, and a lot of times there's deeper shadows, and then you throw a polarizer on it and you put 100% polarization on the scene, those shadows get even deeper, even darker, and you have to account for those kind of things. So when you strip out all of that natural sheen from the leaves and the shadows become very, very dark, you really reduce the perceived depth and dimensionality of the overall photograph, and it can make your image completely flat. Also, too much polarization can wreak havoc when you have the sky in your image, especially when you're using a wide-angle lens. If you ever get those dark corners in the upper left-hand corner and the upper right-hand corner where the sky is, that's a lot of times because you're using a wide-angle lens and you apply too much polarization. But once again, no polarization, 100% polarization, none, and 100%. Here's another quick example here. Same exact thing. No polarizing effect, 100% polarizing effect. And you can see how, yes, I do believe that this image looks better than the image with no polarizing effect applied at all, but the image starts to kind of lose that three-dimensional feel and it looks a little bit flat. See, when you're using a polarizer, you think you're adding punch, but in reality, you might be flattening your image. And the fix, stop going all the way. Try backing off to just 50 or maybe 75% polarization. And I know sometimes it's hard to see where 100% polarization is, but a helpful trick is to watch your histogram as you rotate your polarizer. See, all polarizers stop anywhere from 1 to 2 stops of light, and 100% polarization will be when the greatest amount of light is stopped. So watching your histogram is an easy way to see this. as you rotate your circular polarizer, when your histogram is moving to the left towards the darker tones, and then you see it starting to shift towards the right or the brighter tones, this is when you're very close to max polarization. And once you determine this, it's very simple to back things off just a touch, to cut just enough glare, but still preserve that natural glow of the scene. Here are a few more examples where I intentionally backed off the polarization and the result was a richer, more natural looking fall photo. This is another image from Colorado. I'm definitely starting to see a theme. Or I shouldn't say most, but a good chunk of my favorite fall photos are from the Blue Ridge Mountains in North Carolina and the San Juan Mountains in Colorado. And I really enjoy this image right here. I don't think I've ever actually shared this image. I don't believe it's 100% edited just yet. But you can imagine here, you can see how I backed off the polarizer a little bit, because if I applied 100% polarization to this image here, you can see this small river kind of pouring down through across the mill, and there's a small waterfall here that you can't see. But if I applied a 100% polarization here, all of this would basically, all this, subtle glare would have been completely removed and this water would almost look dark. And I did not want that, because I think that this little bit of sheen on the water right through here adds that dimension, adds that little bit of realism. If you've ever used a polarizer near water, sometimes you can make that water turn completely black or completely dark, and sometimes it looks a little bit odd. Here's another good example from Italy from a couple years ago, one of my favorite fall photos from the Dolomites. But as you can see, if I had a 100% polarization applied, it would have completely removed this little bit of reflection of the sky above here. And this water, actually, as I was rotating it, I could see that this water right through here was completely black, and it really messed up the dimension of the foreground. So finding out where that 100% polarization is and backing off to just a little bit. I usually don't back it off to 50%. It's usually somewhere around 75%, somewhere in that range. So finding 100% and then just backing off just a little bit, because I don't want to completely remove all of the reflection off of surfaces, all of the sheen, because that adds that 3D, that adds that level of realism to your image. Another image, this is from the Blue Ridge Mountains in North Carolina once again, a very old photograph, but as you can see, there is still a lot of reflection all through this area up through here, and I did not completely remove all of that. One more example here from Oregon from quite a few years ago, and you can see that there is still reflection all the way up through here, a little bit of shine from that light kind of coming through the canopy of trees up there, just hitting this area here, because when I had 100% polarization applied to this area, these rocks in the background became completely black. They became completely dark, and it did look very flat. The overall image just didn't have that same realistic punch to it. So the polarizer is still one of the most useful filters you can carry, especially in the fall. But like anything in photography, a subtle touch often goes further than maxing out. So the next time you're out shooting fall color, try stopping short of full polarization and see if your images start to come alive again. Like I said, I do know it's very difficult sometimes to see that 100% polarization, but that histogram technique will definitely make things so much easier. And just to kind of recap that, looking at your histogram, when you see your histogram moving all the way to the left towards those darker tones, and as you're rotating it, and once you see that histogram starting to move back the other direction to the right towards those brighter tones, that's when you know you're kind of in that sweet spot of 100% polarization. And once you have that identified, then you can kind of back things off to 75% polarization or 50% polarization. But a lot of the sheen on leaves or the subtle reflection on rocks and things like that, when you completely remove that, there's a very good chance that you're gonna flatten out your entire image and you're gonna make your image look a little bit unnatural. So leaving a little bit of that in your scene adds a little bit of that three-dimensional touch to your photographs, and I think you will really enjoy that. So I hope you enjoyed this week's video. Also, if you did enjoy it, and if you could, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed already. And if you have any questions about anything that I covered here today, definitely leave those in the comment section below, and I will do my best to get back in touch with you as soon as humanly possible. And as always, I really do appreciate you carving out a little bit of time to spend it with me here today, and I will see you all next Wednesday. Bye.